And we are live. Welcome, everybody. Once again, we are 3FifsPodcast. I'm, as always, your semi-quasi sort of host, Eric. Joining us once again, we have the alliterative Miss Ash.
Sup?
She gives the people what they want, Miss Bree.
Hello.
And you know him, you love him, the real Black Spider-Man, a.k.a. Mr. Watch Out for That Fan, a.k.a. Mr. Still Funny, a.k.a. Mystery Like It So He Put a Ring on It. It's Justin.
How's it going? Like, I feel like today, really like any day like today, it's a great time to clean up your Facebook friends list.
It is.
Man.
Like, it's cold.
Oh yeah.
Like the purge happened and the purge is real. So you get to see a lot of how your friends really think about these sort of things. And yes, we are going to be talking about Baltimore, Freddie Gray, and just a lot of everything that's going on around it. There's so much to unpack here.
Yes.
And I guess the most disappointing part to me, it has to start with, Mayor Rollins Blake. Like, that was just disappointing. How she's handled this entire thing. From, saying, oh, the kids out there are just thugs, to sort of doing everything she can to bend over backwards, to just sort of pander to the police. It's a lot to take in. We're going to cover all that today.
Yep.
All right, so before we jump into everything, I'm going to knock out some of the housekeeping here. We are 3Fifs Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at the number 3Fifs, F-I-F-S Podcast on Twitter. We are standing up our Facebook page right now. We also have a website, 3 spelled out, FifsPodcast.com, 3FifsPodcast.com. We also officially got added to Stitcher this week, so if you search 3Fifs Podcast on Stitcher, you will find us. Leave us a 5-star review, and we will read it on the air, especially if we like the review. If we don't like the review, well, we may read it. We also may say very mean things about you. So the choice is kind of yours there. But
put it on Instagram.
On Stitcher. Please support us there. It's a great way to help other people find us, as well as a great way to find some other great podcasts and some other great Black podcasts. So we're available on Stitcher Radio. You can download their app. You can go to their website. You can choose to listen to it streaming or download it over Wi-Fi and listen to it later. So that's Stitcher.com, 3FifsPodcast.com. Follow us at 3FifsPodcast. Tweet us using the hashtag 3FifsPod. And we will try to respond to you throughout the show or just randomly throughout the week. We also tweet out links to this show, other clips, as well as the other podcast I've started doing with at Carmela Lusta, covering Game of Thrones. So if you're a fan of that, we also do that on Monday nights. So that's, I believe, all the housekeeping we have until the end. I'm going to hand it back over to Justin as our resident man on the ground in the
Hilarious. Yeah, so speaking of on the ground, so we had to go into Baltimore today.
Yeah.
Run some errands in Baltimore. The lower east side. Yes, I still do never eat sour watermelon to get my northeast southwest down. Can't stay away from the classics. So southeast side of Baltimore, near the harbor, run some errands, and this is about 1 o'clock. By the time we leave, everyone was starting to shut down the businesses, and they're like, oh my God, the riots are coming. They've started up again. The police have surrounded the block. The end times are coming. Tiff and I get outside. There's like maybe a National Guardsman or two at the corner, just chilling, being bored as shit. Ain't nothing going on that side of Baltimore. Like, the gentrified part of Baltimore is safe, but you wouldn't realize the way all the people were like, oh my God, the Negroes are coming. And it's on one level, it was hilarious because this one old white guy we were with, he was like, the police have surrounded the building. It's going to get real outside. So on one level, it's hilarious. And then on the other level, it's like really sad and depressing and infuriating and frustrating all at once because they expect this sort of black savagery to come and descend upon their nice, safely gentrified Starbucks and speakeasies. And that's, what matters. But that's sort of the tenor that was.
Let's be real. You know that everybody knows they wasn't not never gonna get to that side of town.
Well, here's the thing. They got to that side of town Saturday or Sunday when they were just doing their march. They did a march from West Side. They made it all the way through the West Side, no problems. Coincidentally, the cops went on the West Side. So they made it to the West Side, no problems. Once they hit like Camden Yards, they actually made it to the baseball stadium. That's when shit went left, and it went left. And no one's gonna tell you. Well, there's an article in the city paper, Baltimore, about why it actually went left. A bunch of drunk Orioles fans started antagonizing the march. They started saying, "Go home, niggers," and the white kids there, they're like, "You nigger lovers, go home. We don't want you. Go back to your welfare checks." They were deliberately antagonizing the protesters. And what happened was, one of my dad's favorite scenes in Harlem Nights, ain't gonna beat you many more motherfuckers around here. Like, you keep messing with someone, eventually they're gonna react. So they reaction, and some people got, the Orioles fans started, like, the people at Camden Yards started throwing bottles first. So it's like, okay, fine, if that's how it's gonna be, fuck it, it'll pop off. And that's what happened. Like, that's how that incident happened. So that's what happened there. And no one's going to talk, well, very few people are going to talk about why it went left, and it went left because the police and the drunk fans at Camden Yards were fucking with people. Like, real talk, if you just leave people alone, they're not going to fuck with you. Like, we saw that in Ferguson. The most successful night of protests in Ferguson happened when the police actively worked with the protesters to ensure that they not only had safe routes, but they weren't also interfering with anyone's traffic route. Like, when you actually work with people and treat them like people and treat them like human beings, bad stuff doesn't happen. So yesterday, everything popped off yesterday at around, when did school let out? School let out about, 2:50, 3 o'clock? That's when sort of everything popped off yesterday. Here's why it popped off. The way West Side Baltimore City is set up, like Baltimore City public schools in general, they don't have a yellow bus system. Like, all the kids that get to and from school rely on public transit. Keep that in mind for what's about to happen next. So the funeral for Freddie Gray just lets out. School's letting out around the same time. Police show up at a high school. They block off the roads, and they shut down public transportation there. So when the kids get out of school, the roads are blocked off, there's cops in full riot gear, and they're telling them disperse or be arrested. So the kids are like, okay, cool. We're just trying to get home. Where are the buses? Buses aren't coming. Other side note, the buses that had already left from the area, police had stopped in and gotten all the kids off the buses.
What?
They had pulled kids off the buses. So this is how all this shit popped off yesterday. So the police deliberately set up a situation where they boxed the kids into high school and then told them disperse or be arrested without giving them any way of getting home. By the way, parents that were trying to get to the high school to pick up their kids because they can't take the public buses home were denied entry. So you boxed in the kids, you've told them they can't go home, and when they say, look, what are we supposed to do? That's when they started tear gassing them and beating them. So that's when the kids said, fuck it. If you're going to box me in and treat me like an animal, then damn it, you're going to get the claws too. So that's when that popped off yesterday.
Wow.
So the kids,
Why shouldn't they just be like Martin Luther King Jr. and
just
be
take the ass
non-violent and just take the ass whooping? I mean, that's what Dr. King would have wanted.
So that happened. The kids get out of that situation, and they're pissed. Like, you just got done beating, macing, and tear gassing them. They're pissed. So that's how the CVS got burned, looted, whatever you want to call it. Because you cornered the kids, you beat the kids, and then you pissed off the kids, and then it said, fuck it, I'm mad. What do angry people do? They do irrational shit. And that's why, like, I've hit the point now, yeah, the easy hot take is rioting is bad. I'm beyond that now. Yes, everyone knows rioting is bad. But what the fuck are we going to do? What the fuck are we going to do to address the shit that happened before the riot? Like, the riots don't just happen out of nowhere. Something has to happen to trigger that. And in this instance, what happened, the cops fucked with a bunch of high school kids. That's how all that shit popped off yesterday.
And they're not known for being the most rational population. Let's be clear.
Why my response to everything is now going to be, but we don't know what happened before the camera started rolling.
Exactly.
That's going to be my new response to everything, because apparently that's the response that's warranted in the inverse situation. So clearly we don't. Now all of a sudden it's just like, oh, they're just whatever being violent, and like,
Right.
okay,
Ta-Nehisi Coates put out a great article about, using nonviolence or preaching nonviolence as a silencing tactic.
Yeah.
And he essentially goes on to say, look, if you're not going to address if you're going to start the nonviolence conversation in the middle and not address the, what started all of this, you're essentially blaming the forest fire for spreading. You're saying, wow, that forest fire is angry. How the fuck did the fire start? Fires don't come out of nowhere, right?
No, it clearly came out of nowhere. I don't know why you can't understand that it's just clearly angry, irrational blacks.
It's that Negro jungle magic.
And they just start rioting and doing stuff.
Apparently they also
no
probably
reason.
break their own spines and shoot themselves in the back of police cars while handcuffed after being patted down.
Yeah. Well,
right.
It's magic.
Yep.
It's frustrating. And then because I live in this area, it's so frustrating to see all these people now that live in the Glen Burnies and the Kenilworths that have fled the city. Now they're saying, see, that's why I left the city in the first place. Those Negroes don't know how to act. Look at how bad you look. And I'm like you said earlier, everyone wants to bring up Martin Luther King in these situations, but they forget, like Martin Luther King also said, a riot is the language of the unheard. Martin Luther King also said, before I can condemn, I can't sit there and condemn riots without first addressing the situations that led to the rioting. Everybody wants to finger wag and say, look, rioting is bad, don't riot. Well, fuck it, how do we get here in the first place? My president No, go ahead.
My favorite part of when these happen is because people trot out Martin Luther King Jr. memes, and it causes me to go read MLK's Wikipedia page, and every time I learn a little bit something new. This time, I decided to read through the section on the Poor People's Campaign.
Oh yeah, I read that too.
The campaign he had advanced on shortly before his assassination, where they talk about. I had always assumed that part of the Poor People's Campaign was the one for a living wage. That was one of the tenets of it. I was wrong. It was not a living wage. It was, I can't think of the exact term, but basically it was that part of the economic Bill of Rights that they were advancing was that basically everyone should receive a salary from the government, period, as base pay to everyone ahead of anything you earn working.
Well, they wouldn't have let that happen.
And coincidentally, when he started preaching that was when he got shot.
Exactly. Yes. But you notice most of the people who try out MLK in these instances tend to either be racially privileged or they tend to be economically privileged. Or both.
Well, yeah. Well, that's why they want it.
Not even just that. They only trot out the one speech they know because this man was a civil rights activist for years on years, and they know they know part of the I Have a Dream speech, and they pull it out anytime they feel like, well, would Martin have wanted, I didn't die for this, and da-da-da-da-da, and I'm just like, oh my goodness. Have you ever read anything else he ever said ever?
It was the guaranteed basic income. That is the idea that an unconditional basic income, also called basic income guarantee, in which all citizens or residents of a country regularly receive an unconditional sum of money, either from a government or some public institution, in addition to any income they receive elsewhere. An unconditional income transfer of less than the poverty line is sometimes referred to as a partial basic income. That was one of the tenets of the Poor People's Campaign, was that the government should be giving everyone a guaranteed basic income. But going back to what Brianna was talking about, we were actually talking about this earlier, that the I Have a Dream speech is arguably the Young Thug song of civil rights. No one really knows what he said. They're just like, yeah, no, I like that song. Yeah, no, that was a great speech you gave. Dream. Content character. Yeah, it's my jam. Love that one.
That may be the best parallel I've ever heard.
Oh my God.
Eric just won the day.
Podcast
Eric just
over.
won the
I'm
day.
going to bed.
Like, drop mic thread over. It's a wrap.
Let me put my piano up. Color Purple spell.
We're done. Thanks for joining us today, y'all.
Thank you for watching, tuning in. You can see us again next weekend. Now
we can't.
We gonna keep it rolling. We gonna keep it rolling. So additional added perspective, like what's happening in Baltimore now, it didn't just start with Freddie Gray. So the Baltimore County PD has essentially run like an unchecked terrorist organization within West Baltimore proper. They've, in the last 3 years, I'll pull it up in a second. I don't want my hangouts to spaz out, but I think in the last 3 years they've paid out something close to $6 million in police brutality lawsuits.
Yeah, I think. I saw that number.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and it's not just black kids that are part of this. There's an old lady that was a victim. There was someone riding a bike. This is what they do. They beat people. They hurt people, and not necessarily criminals. That's what Baltimore County PD does. That's the way the way Ferguson County PD is set up. Is basically run as an extortion racket on the black communities in Ferguson.
Wow.
Baltimore County PD is set up to run as not an extortion racket. What's the word I'm looking for? Like sort of an intimidation racket. Not racketeering, enforcement, because they're not actually collecting money from them. They're just sort of trying to keep them out of the gentrified parts of East Baltimore. They're trying to keep them in West Baltimore. The minute just to let you know, hey, you get out of pocket, this is what's waiting for you on the other side.
That's basically an actual ghetto.
No, and that's what it is.
Yeah, they block you in and you can't get out.
Like Nazi level actual ghetto.
It's a ghetto because more history in Baltimore. Baltimore has a lot. It was like, if you drive around Baltimore, you'll see there's a lot of empty factories here. So it's sort of similar to Detroit. Jobs just left. And when jobs started leaving and they started getting shipped overseas, they didn't do anything for the people that depended on that as a way out. Because the school system here really ain't the best.
Yeah.
But it was always, look, go to school, graduate, get a factory job. Well, those jobs aren't here anymore. So what's the unemployment in Baltimore? It has a pretty bad unemployment rate. So you have a bunch of people living in bad conditions with limited opportunities to make a means for themselves.
But what about the bootstraps?
Brianna beat me to it.
They burned. You can't pull yourself up by the bootstraps when your boots have been set on fire.
But they ain't got no damn boots.
You gotta work with what you got, doggone it now.
Right.
You pull yourself up by the shoestrings.
By your toes.
By your toenails.
Forbes actually has a really good article on sort of the history of why all of this happened. And it goes back, I want to say it goes back to the 1968 Baltimore riots. But someone else who has a nice perspective on why all of this sort of hit the powder keg now, the Baltimore Orioles are owned by the Angelos family. And the Angelos family is kind of different from other sports owners because they made their bones through labor lawyers. So they are vehemently pro-labor, pro-union. I want to say back when baseball was trying to trot out the replacement players, Peter Angelos' dad argued in favor of not doing that. So
that explains that statement the son made then.
Exactly. So, and that's what I was about to read. The son statement, they're labor lawyers. They are vehemently pro-union, pro-labor, pro-people. So the chief operating officer, Peter Angelos' son, John, he put out a statement, and his statement said, he was replying to someone on Twitter. And this is just the whole reply. Brett, speaking only for myself, I agree with your point that the principle of peaceful nonviolent protest and the observance of rule of law is of utmost importance in any society. MLK, Gandhi, Mandela, All great opposition leaders throughout history have preached this precept. Further, it is critical that in any democracy, investigation must be completed and due process must be honored before any government or police members are judged responsible. That said, my greater source of personal concern, outrage, and sympathy beyond this particular case is focused neither upon one night's property damage nor upon the acts, but is focused rather upon the past 4-decade period during which an American political elite have shipped middle-class and working-class jobs away from Baltimore and cities and towns around the U.S. to third-world dictatorships like China and the others, plunged tens of millions of good, hardworking Americans into economic devastation, and then followed that action around the nation by diminishing every American civil rights protections in order to control an unfairly impoverished population living under an ever-declining standard of living and suffering at the butt end of an ever more militarized and aggressive surveillance state.
So basically everything you just said to us.
Yeah, like that. That while he's speaking on a microcosm, that's exactly what happened in Baltimore.
But I mean, arguably, that's what you see in society for years and centuries, is that when you have a group of people who cannot eat, cannot feed their families, and then you add to that you want to victimize and oppress them, then you get the French Revolution. And people just start wrecking shop.
But think about it. How many revolutions, changes have happened because of rioting? This fucking country was founded on a riot.
I looked up on the Wikipedia page. I couldn't even count them all. They started from like 100 BC.
And shoot, they're lucky black people aren't acting like the French, because at the end of the French Revolution, monarchs were getting beheaded.
Everybody was getting beheaded.
So that's the other thing. Everyone loves to say violence isn't the answer. You have to do this peacefully. The American history is built on, as Ta-Nehisi Coates so eloquently put, shooting people in the face. Like all social change, all change in America has come from shooting someone in the face.
In smallpox.
Now, and somebody on my timeline was like, they've been protesting in Baltimore for a week, and you just heard about it today, but they're doing it wrong. And I was like,
my president, while I don't agree with everything he said, the last points he made when he said essentially we can't just pay attention to these communities when a CVS burns down,
exactly.
or when a young man's spine is severed and he is killed. We have to treat these kids like they are our kids, and that's the problem. We don't view these kids as our own. Everyone loves to watch The Wire, and people love to quote The Wire, but they're suddenly shocked when they see the logical conclusion of everything that they witnessed in The Wire.
Yeah.
It's like all these bricks and rocks. Where did all that stuff come from?
Because I hear y'all got a lot of, not even just factories, y'all got a lot of empty houses, right?
Yeah, empty houses, dilapidated buildings.
Yeah, so a lot of the boarded up buildings that CNN was ironically showing weren't boarded up because of rioting. They're boarded up because no one lives there, and no one's lived there for about a decade. Like, that's the state of Baltimore.
Oh, it's like that around here. Well, depending on what side of Atlanta you go on, it's like that. Like, if you go down it's kind of like watching snow on the bluff and then being surprised when you see someone getting shot in the bluff, or see someone sell drugs, or see a crackhead walk down the street.
Yeah.
But there's a neighborhood that's in what one might call the hood of my particular city, and there's a section within that section that is $1 million homes.
Yep.
That part not look like nothing around it. Some kind of way, crackheads don't wander in there. Yeah. There's nothing falling down around it. There's businesses around it, but then you go one street over and it looked like...
That's Atlanta. I was going to say Bankhead, but that's pretty much all of Atlanta. One street is condos, turn on the next, it's a crack den. That's Atlanta.
Like it's literally 2 Baltimores. So pulling from the Forbes article, it's the Forbes article, Why Baltimore Burned. The median household income from Eastside Baltimore, like from Northeast Baltimore and West Baltimore, it's a damn near $70,000 gap in the median income. Ooh.
Let me man, look, the house that I used to live in before I moved back home a few months ago, I want to say that house was built in the mid '80s. If you turn a corner, you just go to the industry and turn a corner. They got these Jetsons looking houses, and I'm like, what?
And it tells you something about how when you when a city wants to keep a certain area a certain way, they will.
Oh yeah.
They have no problem keeping this whole surrounding area full of $1 million homes perfectly fine, and you go 2 inches outside of it, and it looks like a bomb went off or something. Yep. Boarded up houses, stuff falling down, stuff condemned. Just
this is downtown Detroit, where I actually interviewed for a job up there, where the building I interviewed in, they owned it. And I would have thought the building was abandoned. Most of the buildings around it were, like, empty, boarded up. But if I went another 2 blocks up, I'd be on the waterfront looking at Canada. And if I went probably 4 blocks down, I would be at where the Tigers and the Lions play. And museums and all of this touristy area that they help maintain, like all of that. But I go 4 blocks over, and it's abandoned, boarded up buildings that look like bombs went off inside of them.
Yeah, they're pushing people out. They're pushing people out. That's why down here in Atlanta, I don't know if y'all know, I think Justin might know a little bit about MARTA.
Yeah.
MARTA, compared to a lot of other transit systems in larger cities, is kind of small, and that's kind of on purpose. We've had people fighting tooth and nail to get MARTA expanded more further up north, further out east, further out west, but people in the surrounding counties don't want it to expand because of a bad element. Like, MARTA's been around since the early 70s. It's just now getting into I'm about to say Clayco, but don't nobody know what it is. It's just now getting into Clayton County, and now they're trying to get into Gwinnett. These white folks have been fighting to keep MARTA out, and it isn't a coincidence that pretty much maybe 89% was the last number I saw. 89% of MARTA patrons are black people. Hell, a nickname for MARTA is moving Africans rapidly through Atlanta.
Yeah.
And they don't want them Africans up in Alpharetta, up in Dunwoody, and whatever.
Well, everybody has those certain areas where you're like, well, I can't drive around here too long. We were driving around an area not too long ago, like, well, this is pretty. We should go.
Yeah, like, let me leave. When you start getting the turnaround and the zombies notice you looks from white people, it's time to go.
Like the Kingdom of the Body Snatchers, we're like, not one of us. Not one of us.
Like, all right, we've been driving around here long enough. They're going to start asking questions. Let's get the hell home.
When you look into the car next to you and you see the white people looking back at you, it's time to go.
They would just be like, what you doing over here?
You are not one of us.
I'm like, oh,
okay. Right.
And it's because that, like, sort of dichotomy and the sort of existence of those two cities. And it's really not just Baltimore, right? Any major metropolitan area, any major city, this can happen to you. Detroit, Cleveland, D.C. D.C. is quiet. Well, I shouldn't say quietly because we're starting to notice now. D.C. is not going to be Chocolate City in about 20 years. They're kicking all y'all out.
Oh, yeah.
Richmond.
That's what they're doing in Atlanta.
Richmond.
I think they're doing that in pretty much every major city. They're going back into the urban areas. They're taking back the downtowns, and they're going to price you out of the market. And because there are places in my quote-unquote old neighborhood I couldn't afford to live in. I have a job, salary, I'm no slouch, got an education, got a couple of degrees, whatever. I can't afford to live over there.
And another fucked up thing with MARTA is most of the houses around the bus stops, unless you are like on the west side and the west end where the hood is, if you want to live by a train station, you're going to pay some guap. And that's interesting. Exactly, because 9 out of 10 of people living there don't really need MARTA.
I was like, how many people are really using the transit system on a regular basis there that, can afford cars and gas and stuff?
See, that's the other part. A lot of people that use public transportation are people that depend on it to get to and from work to survive, right?
Me? I am one of those people. And let me tell you, those people living around the train stations are not the ones that be on the train next to me. It be folks in Wendy's uniforms, in cooking uniforms, working at the Dollar Tree, girls with their little babies. It is not no yuppies walking around with some Starbucks and some yoga pants.
Right.
At least not until you get to closer to the city, at least.
So as far as DC Metro goes, DC Metro is different. I want to say DC Metro is more like the metro system that you'd have in New York, where you do have a lot of people that work in the city, like federal workers, contractors that use the metro just because it's cheaper and less stressful than driving in there. So what you have is blue, yellow, green are sort of your those are your quote unquote upstanding lines, right? Those are the lines that go into the city. They go through. I think those are the ones that you'll see your businessmen on. Then you've got the lower half of the green line, the red line, and the east side of the orange line. That's your other side of the metro. Like it's really two metros, like two cities. So, and that's why all of this happens. It's not just because cops murder someone and they're not held accountable. That's the catalyst, but that's not why all of this anger has been building up.
And it amazes me that nobody else I was up in New York and Pennsylvania and New Jersey recently, and I was driving around like upstate out in the middle of Nowhereville, and it's a mess. Like, there are barns and houses falling down, burned down. Stuff is just dilapidated. It's old.
Yeah. As we've discussed, that's because the middle of this country is full of poor people on meth.
Well,
again, you take jobs away from people and you leave them with little options, they turn to drugs. Whether it's crack on the East Coast, meth in the Midwest, and then I'm about to say, what's the West Coast drug of choice? I want to say the West Coast has a little bit of everything. Meth, LSD.
Whatever dealer's choice.
Mexicans?
Dealer's choice in Cali. I just feel like I just feel like racism is like the perfect classist system, because somehow it convinced all of those people in middle America that the reason that their stuff is all torn up and burned up and jobs are gone is somehow because minorities.
Because Negroes.
Right. And when
all the welfares and the health cares.
And the stamps.
I'm bringing it back to earlier. When did Martin Luther King get shot? When he started talking about Vietnam and when he started talking to these poor white people. That's when he got shot. When he started talking.
I have to share this with y'all. Continue. I just have to share this real quick.
No, just that was my point. Just once, MLK started saying, hey, it ain't just the plight of the poor Negro. It's really the plight of poor people in America. And part of that exploitation of you poor people is they're sending you over to Vietnam. Oh, well, now he's giving the game away. Now we've got to shoot him in the face. I saw that on Twitter this morning. There's another one. And they stole, they stole that from, I can't remember her name on Twitter. But she has two versions of that. She has one that says, hi, it looks like you're about to value property over Black lives. Would you like some help with that?
Is it with the paper clip? That's great, yes, Mr. Clip It. I used to love Mr. Clip It when I was like, what was that, second grade or something?
Right. So the other thing, we referenced how the president said earlier in his statements today while he was talking about the TPP with Japan, and he went off the usual checklist that he does. I sort of differ with the president when it comes to his views on respectability. He very much buys into that respectability politics, but he also shows he also shows a level of dissonance there because he also says, "But it ain't our problem to fix." And that side of him sort of leaked out today. So he said something to the effect of, we can't just pay, and I mentioned it earlier, we can't just pay attention to these communities when a CVS burns down or when when the cops kill somebody. We can fix this in America very easily if we all just collectively said, we have to fix this. But we don't want to fix it because we don't view these kids as our own. We view them as sort of like through a window glass. Like everybody loves in the Hunger Games when District 11 rioted over Bruce's death. Everybody loves The Wire when they stand up to the corruption in the BCPD. But when we actually see it happen in real time, what happens? Like we're met with disgust, we're met with finger wagging, and no one's addressing why it happened. And at the end of the day, a major reason for this, the catalyst for all of this, a man was arrested by 6 officers
and got his back broken.
And in the
spine severed.
Had his spine severed.
How do you
in the time
spine?
In the time of him being arrested and him being sent to the hospital, somewhere while he was in police custody, his spine gets severed. And we have no answers for that. We have no sense of urgency from, the mayor's office, from the governor's office.
No, we got a sense of urgency. It's a sense of urgency to appease the white people. To
appease the police union specifically.
Because
Mayor Stephanie Rollins Blake, her whole game is, I have to stay on the police union's good side. And that's just the dirty secret of Baltimore politics.
Well, yeah, that's
exactly. You got to stay on the police union's good side because heaven forbid you get on their bad side and they start pulling those resources out of your re-election campaign. Baltimore is unique in the sense that a lot of the people that the police union won't get her elected and the police union didn't get her elected. So she could actually go against the police union if she so chose. She could actually say, hey, you know what? No, you have to be held accountable for your actions. Like, this shit has to end. She could say that. She's choosing not to for whatever reason. She'd rather talk about the evils done in the night and not address the fact that the police started this.
And where is the investigation for this? Because it's been a while.
Well, they're limited on that. Because Maryland also has a beautiful thing called the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights. It is a series of special rights that were passed for particularly law enforcement officers that govern how they can be investigated. The problem, said Baltimore Mayor, I'm reading from the Huffington Post.
Right.
Let me see if I can find the author piece by the Marshall Project, Eli Hager. I'm assuming it's Hager. The problem, said Baltimore Mayor Stephanie Rollins Blake, is that the city officials were unable to fully engage with the officers because of our law enforcement officers' Bill of Rights. That such a Bill of Rights exists was news to many in Maryland. But the mayor was correct to note the significant role the Leo Board, as it is called, has played in the investigation of Freddie Gray's death, a set of due process rights for police officers under internal investigation for alleged misconduct. Maryland's Leo Board includes a provision that the officers cannot be forced to make any statements for 10 days after the incident, during which time they are presumed to be searching for a lawyer. It is partly because of this cooling-off period, to critics a convenient delay for cops to tidy up their stories, that so little has been said by the only people who know what took place within the vehicle. The standard Leo Board also provides that an officer may only be questioned for a reasonable length of time at a reasonable hour by only 1 or 2 investigators who must be fellow policemen and with plenty of breaks for food and water.
Are you serious?
These motherfuckers legit play by a different set of rules. So let's review. They don't have to make a statement for 10 days. So they have 10 days to get their story straight on what happened.
Right.
They legit play by a different set of rules. Dog, NWA was right. Like, I feel like that's the title of the show.
A bill calling for adoption of a national Leo Board is pending in Congress and is reintroduced often. The idea, say union officials, is that what constitutes due process for civilians is not protection enough for enforcers of the law who operate under the aggressive scrutiny of internal investigators and the public. As the Police Benevolent Association has put it, rank-and-file officers are sometimes subject to abusive and improper procedures by internal affairs officers and prosecutors out for blood. All
you know
this
who else
does
suffered?
provide a very basic level of constitutional protection for our officers so that they can make statements that will stand up later in court. The police, he adds, have rights like anyone else.
So basically, they're trying to protect their necks. That's basically what it is: protect your neck.
You know who else was subjected to abuse and improper procedures? Freddie Gray.
Yeah, but he already has his constitutional protections. He doesn't need.
He doesn't need the extra ones.
God,
we need the extra.
No, I remember this bullshit. Okay, I remember this bullshit, and that's why. That's okay, because I read this article earlier and I'm sitting like, I've heard about this before today. I want to say Ulrich, the mayor before O'Malley, had a hand in this one. Let me make sure. But anyways, so back in November, instead of electing Anthony Brown, Maryland decided to elect Larry Hogan, the asshat you see on CNN now saying things like, oh, well, we've increased the National Guard 10,000 people. We're not going to let these violent thugs, destroy our city. They elected that asshat instead of Anthony Brown. Part of what makes Larry Hogan infamous in Maryland and how I have no idea, like, it blows my mind how he was elected. He was part of the plan to veto state-sponsored healthcare in Maryland. That's this guy. And he's your governor. God, it's so mind-blowing. So yeah, the cops in Maryland legit play by a different set of rules. That's why they're being so aggressive here. That's why you're seeing the Ferguson tactics. Like, I feel like the lesson Baltimore took from Ferguson wasn't, how to successfully work with protesters. It's how to successfully run a police occupation and not get flack for it. Because a lot of what happened in Ferguson and a lot of the flack Ferguson PD got was because they were so damn incompetent and they couldn't pull it off correctly. Mm-hmm. No, Baltimore and Maryland, Hogan's running a very well-oiled machine, a very well-oiled spin machine to make sure that the focus is always on the rioting and never the fact that a man had his spine severed and suffered for 7 days under his custody.
Under police custody. To the good parts about the Leo Board.
Please continue. Please continue.
If a department decides to pursue a complaint against an officer, the department must notify the officer and his union. The officer must be informed of the complaints and their testimony against him before he is questioned. During questioning, investigators may not harass, threaten, or promise rewards to the officer, as investigators not infrequently do to civilian suspects. Bathroom breaks are assured during questioning. In Maryland, the officer may appeal his case to a hearing board whose decision is binding before a final decision has been made by his superiors about his discipline. The hearing board consists of 3 of the suspected offenders' fellow officers. In some jurisdictions, the officer may not be disciplined if more than a certain number of days, often 100, have passed since his alleged misconduct, which limits the time for investigation. Even if the officer is suspended, the department must continue to pay salary and benefits as well as the cost of the officer's attorney.
See, now I'm about to go looking at police unions on APD in DeKalb County because this.
Wait, they have to pay for the lawyer?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh. Interesting.
This is mind blowing to me.
Isn't the Leo Board?
I don't think I got to that part yet. But the Leo Board rose in the late 60s and early 70s, a reaction against the efforts of civil rights activists to demand greater police accountability, including the advent of civilian review boards. Under these bills of rights, an investigation by fellow officers may preempt a civilian review. In 2 rulings in 67 and 68, the Supreme Court sided with officers who claim that they have been deprived of their Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination. The justices ruled that the police cannot be forced by threat of firing or otherwise to testify against themselves, even in an internal administrative review.
Wow.
Let's see.
This is my...
So legit, the system is stacked to set up...
Yeah, pretty much. By the time you go through jumping through all these hoops, like 100 days.
So I'm trying to figure out how in every other investigation you need to figure out stuff in the first 48, but for some reason in these particular investigations you need to figure stuff out in the first
10 days.
10 days, week and a half.
You cannot find out anything within the first 48. The next 72, though, you might be okay. You might be okay.
This don't make no damn sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. Like Eric said, these rose up as sort of a counter to civil rights legislation. They saw what was happening with these federal review boards for voting.
Because people were seeing the issues that the police were causing and were finally able to call them on it, so they had to figure out a way to fix that.
Right.
And that's why people were just like, well, you have to forget about the past. No, you need to read.
Nah. No, absolutely not. Forget about the past. Hell, we need to do something about the president if those types of laws are still in the books. I'm about to really go look into Atlanta's.
That's what these are.
Because this is scary.
In Rhode Island, for example, not only is the accused officer's case decided by a hearing board of 3 fellow officers, the officer gets to choose one of those officers.
Like, I have to laugh. I have to laugh.
Wait.
What the fuck?
3 fellow officers do the review to decide if I committed misconduct,
and one
I get to pick one.
Me.
Yes.
Nigga, let me pick one of my jury. Let me pick the jury of my peers.
Yes. Newfield argues, jumping ahead, basically with the fact that in many of these officers' bills of rights, you have to wait at least 48 and as much as hours and as much as 10 days before you can really question someone. Newfield argues that if officers accused of wrongdoing were interviewed immediately following the event, they would not have their cover stories at the ready, and the years of follow-up external investigation could be avoided. But Canales, the head of the Maryland Police Union, says that the real source of controversy should not be the Leo bar. What people are mad about right now is our lack of communication, and we need to do better. We need to do better. We do need to be better about that. We've got to keep the public better informed about how exactly we're conducting these investigations and what we know or don't know. But the Leo board doesn't have anything to do with this question of transparency, if you think about it.
It has everything to do with it.
All this Bill of Rights does, he says, is provide basic due process for our officers who are covered by the Constitution, just like anyone else.
No, that's not basic due process. Yeah. Basic due process is right to a trial and a jury of your peers. This is protecting necks and covering asses.
Drizzen, who is someone who has challenged some of these and is an activist on this subject, Drizzen agrees, though from a different vantage point. I don't think, actually, that police officers should not have these rights. I think that everyone should have a Bill of Rights like this.
Exactly. So if this Bill of Rights is such a great thing, Maryland Police Union, why not extend them to everybody? Why not let everybody have this sort of Bill of Rights?
Well, it would be nice, but then you still wouldn't get to use it because your spine would be snapped in a cell somewhere and nobody would be able to explain what happened.
Or they'll shoot you in the head and then leave you laying on the street for a few hours. But that's only if it makes it to an investigation, because you got grand juries ruling that they're not even going to try to take the shit to trial.
It's frustrating. It's so frustrating.
Meanwhile, in California, a man ran away from the police on a horse. They beat him for 2 minutes. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. $650,000 settlement. And he got an interview on TV talking about it. Criminal history. Running away from the police. He gets beat up. $650,000. 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
I'm still stuck on the horse.
Yeah. He rode out like a real American.
Is this?
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
It wasn't his fault.
Would you like to take a stab at the race or ethnicity of said horse rider?
Well, see, I don't know, because in Baltimore we steal police horses, so I don't know.
I'm going to go ahead and say he's related to Dwight Peoples.
He is indeed a member of Dwight Peoples' family.
Oh, so is this Dwight Folks? People's son?
Yeah, Dwight Folks. And he is very upset about what happened. He thought he was going to die. They had this on camera, of course, but I'm not exactly sure what happened that's different. He was running from the cops. And he has a criminal history. They were attempting to arrest him for a crime. Let me see. What else is different? I can't come up with anything.
I don't. And what's truly frustrating to me, what truly just like sends me through a roof, we have all of this documented. We have all of this like available information, and people still want to play the, well, if you did this the right way, this wouldn't happen. A local radio station in Baltimore, 92Q, they've been on this respectability shit all day. They've been saying shit like, MLK would be spinning his grave. This isn't the right way to do it. You don't burn down your own communities. Why are you so focused on that instead of the fact that the cops killed a member of your community? Like, why are we so focused on how we look to other people instead of how they treat us?
Because like, there's still a focus on me having to prove my humanity to you by maintaining an air of perfection that would warrant you treating me the way the law says you're supposed to treat me, at the very least, as an officer of the people.
I like that it's their community now. Remember, because arguably many of the same people who talk about how they're all on welfare, they don't pay taxes, they don't work, they don't own businesses, it's the taxpayers' money, the taxpayers' house, and they're leeching off of everything. But now, when it's on fire, it's your community, and you're destroying your stuff. Before, it was everybody else's stuff. But now, when you need to shame someone, I'm supposed to have a stake in it.
What I missed?
Right, and it's all a shame game. It's all just, let me prove that I'm the above it all Negro. Let me prove that
if we were even gonna go there are 10,000 people protesting peacefully in the city. If we're gonna go with the law of averages, that means that most of the people there, even if we were to go with all the accounts of the quote unquote riots, that means that most of the people there are protesting peacefully.
From what I've seen, out of 10,000 people, from what I've seen, out of 10,000 people, was maybe 100. That's like 1%. How is 1% of the people out in the streets making the news, but the other 99%, I was going to try to do the number, but the other 99% don't? That is... As someone who works in journalism and all that good stuff, I have to say the media is bullshit.
I don't get this whole respectability motion when you have thousands upon thousands of people who are quote unquote doing exactly what we have been discussing as far as quote unquote respectability, and yet all anybody can focus on is this.
Well, because they don't want to talk about the real issue. So whatever they can find to distract from it, whatever is something that keeps me from having to look at, is there a systematic problem with police across this country abusing their authority when it comes to poor people and African Americans, and especially poor African Americans? Well, exactly. I don't want to think about that. I don't want to deal with that problem, because that would also cause me to have to question how I think and feel about these things and realize that I hold some really bigoted views. So instead, that 1% who did something I disagreed with, those are the ones who are the whole problem, and you need to go fix them and black-on-black crime before we're going to talk about how you're being disenfranchised and disallowed your rights.
If I hear one more black-on-black crime, I'm going to throw something.
And it's funny because you bring that up when we have this picture of the Bloods, the Crips, the Black Guerrilla family, and Nation of Islam in a picture together. And not long after I see this picture comes a story about that the police have reliable sources that are telling them that these groups are banding together to take out police officers. And while I have my issues with gangs because of all the crap they've done in the community, and I'm not on some black and black shit, why did it take the actual gang members getting on television to basically say, okay, we're not doing all that, we're trying to stop people from hurting each other? For people
that's a bold move.
Exactly.
That's a bold move to put your face out there as a gang member.
Especially wearing your colors and wearing your flags.
So, here, again, background information on that. What was it?
Who's your reliable sources? That's why I
they announced the funeral they announced the date of the funeral on Sunday, I think, and that's when the Nation of Islam brokered the truce. Essentially, the truce was, hey, for the funeral, we're not going to mess with each other. People are, Freddie Gray was one of us. We're not going to fuck with each other while this is all going on. We're going to respect the protesters. We're going to respect the family, because that's fucked up. No one should have to go through that at the hands of the police. The Nation of Islam brokered that truce between the three big gangs in Baltimore. Essentially, the truce was saying, we're not going to do anything this week because we want to respect y'all that are mourning. That's what the truce was, and that's what it has always been. Like, when it was announced Sunday, that's what it was. They put out a statement and everything and said, hey, look, we're not doing anything this week. That's it. Y'all can mourn, do whatever you want. We're not going to mess with y'all. Ceasefire. The Baltimore PD took that unity and said, oh, we have a credible threat to our lives. So essentially what you're saying is black unity is a threat to your life, which is really what this all goes back to. Like, if you notice my thing down there says, not your respectable Negro. They're afraid of black unity. It ain't just, oh, they're afraid of us in suits. No, they're afraid of you, period. They don't respect you. They don't view you as human.
Especially if it's the epitome of the archetype of thugs getting together and unifying. Could you imagine what would happen if there was a permanent ceasefire among these groups? And if they conducted themselves like just different groups. Okay, I'm in this group, you're in that group, we cool though. Could you imagine if something like that actually happened and it stayed in place, what they would do?
Warriors,
come out and play. I'm a cat. You dig it. Cat, you dig it.
Like,
that's what I think of every time. Every time.
As we start to wrap up, the other thing that really pissed me off. So, after the riots, there was an effort put together by people in Baltimore proper to clean up the damage and to feed the kids because they closed school this week. When you have a poor city, a lot of those kids rely on school lunches and breakfast to eat. Yeah. Those are their only sort of filling meals, and those are their only viable meals.
That says something. If they're anything like the meals down here, that says something. Because I think the last number I saw was 89% of the kids in Baltimore are on free lunch.
Oh, wow.
Well, Baltimore City, rather.
I'd believe it. So you had efforts being put together. All the people were organizing with all the food banks saying, hey, look, if you relied on free lunch, you can come here, and here to get food. Rec centers stayed open later than usual so the kids would have a place to go because a lot of these kids use school as an escape to not be around their families for whatever reason. Yeah. The community came together to look out for its own, and it was nice, and it was lovely until about 2 p.m. where the National Guard showed up and forced people to stop sweeping the streets. So at about 2 o'clock, people that were cleaning up the community and feeding people were told, you cannot do this by the people that are supposed to be protecting them.
Basically, any sort of Negro collectiveness and unity scares them. Whether it's a bunch of niggas tearing up shit together or it's a bunch of people cleaning up shit together. You just cannot have people unifying.
How does that work? How do you tell somebody you can't clean up a street?
They said you cannot cross this line. They're cleaning up the street.
They're on curfew right now.
Yeah, they're on curfew. But this was at 2 p.m. So once they got, I want to say, by the check cashing place near the CVS, that's when the National Guard showed up and said, you can't cross this line. Whatever you're doing,
about that on that CVS, I don't know what to do.
So you have that. Counter to that, you have Whole Foods and Five Guys feeding or providing food to the National Guard that are here.
Yeah, I heard about that.
This is why that pisses me off. Yes, Whole Foods and Five Guys. This is why that pisses me off.
Pinnacle of white yuppiness.
Like, it's frustrating and angering and infuriating because these aren't people in a combat zone. These are people that could easily just walk into your establishment and buy something. It's not like they need it. They don't need this. You are giving food to people who don't need it while ignoring the starving kids.
This is the sacred cow of America.
You don't want Negroes running and burning down Whole Foods.
And military are one of America's great sacred cows. Like this.
If America had royalty.
Yeah, like that's part of why all of this, police officer kills someone. Well, I mean, let's wait for the police officer side of the story. Well, they're really heroes. And we know some people who work in law enforcement who will readily tell you, look, it's a job. I show up, I punch in, I do what I have to, I punch out, I leave. And yet, at the same time, we'll also tell you it's the most dangerous thing and I should be praised as a hero for it. But also, I'm just a person who makes mistakes and, they try to have it every single which way they can. I'm above everything, but I'm just like you, but I deserve special exemption and praise. But really, I'm just like the rest of us. And try to have it every which way. And that's why Whole Foods is coming out and giving people who are paid, who are there as part of a coordinated effort, who have food and shelter provided for them as part of the plans that are made for them to be there. And they're giving them free food while people who they know are starving or underfed, they are ignoring.
Well, that's because they're poor and black, and that is a character flaw that we just cannot ignore when giving
and they got the food stamps. They can get their own food.
Bree hit it on the head. Bree hit it on the head. Being poor and black is a character flaw.
Yes. Yep. Poverty is a character flaw in America.
Two character flaws, actually.
So you have double. You're poor, which is your fault, and then you're black.
Which makes you predisposed to be all of the things, in addition to being poor.
You have all of that, and you have a mayor and a governor who are more concerned with the optics of appeasing police than the actual well-being of their communities and the people that are actually hungry and suffering in their communities. At this point, I'm past the hot take of rioting is bad. At this point, I'm like, fuck it, I understand.
Right.
I get why they burn that shit into the ground.
Well,
it's sad, but guess what? That CVS was insured.
The other part.
Why do they only have one CVS?
That's all they could get down there because of the Negroes.
The other part of this is that, as a kind of another note, is people talk about, they're not concerned about the well-being of their community. They're concerned about the well-being of their community. They don't view those Baltimore residents as part of their community.
Exactly.
His community is the Fraternal Order of Police and the other side of Baltimore. And her community are the other high-minded elites who are standing around talking about how terrible it is that they would riot, but not mentioning, 6 police officers did kill that guy. That's the community that they're worried about. They don't view the poor black people who are being regularly abused by police officers in Baltimore as their community or as worthy of their protection.
That's what really irritates me about conservative viewpoints that I keep seeing popping up. And, y'all know I love Jesus. I'm a Christian. I love Jesus. I cannot stand how people have decided that these people are not worth their time or their sympathy or their help because they have an ideal behind what they think someone deserves based on what they may or may not have done. When, to me, as a Christian, I feel like you are supposed to help people. Jesus said, the poor will be with you always, and treat them as if it were me.
Why
and people are conservative, pushing these conservative viewpoints, and they are just maligning poor people all day long about how they don't do this, and they don't deserve this, and this, that, and the other, and not realizing that everything, if you are a Christian, everything that you have is from the grace of God. You don't deserve anything. And that just really irritates me, how people really will sit up there and talk about what they deserve and what I deserve and what they don't deserve, not recognizing that if you are truly a Christian, to me, you recognize the sovereignty of God and the fact that He is the source of everything, and you would have more compassion for people.
No, I have all this
That's
stuff.
too easy. That's too much.
God gave it to me because I'm so awesome at being Christian. That's why I have all this stuff. If you were better at it, then you would have all this stuff too. You just weren't Christianing good enough.
That really irritates me. I cannot express, I cannot literally express in words how much that bothers me, to hear how people talk about people because they had a criminal past, or because they're poor, or because, like, all of these groups that are marginalized, and you should be trying to reach out to these people, and what you're doing is telling them basically, well, that's what you get, and if you were more like me.
They don't want to keep in mind that the person they're supposed to worship was executed as a dissident.
That's the thing. Jesus was nailed to a cross because he preached a message of uniting poor people. God! How can you not understand that? Like, it.
Can we just clip this whole thing? Because people just seem to conveniently miss that part. That he hung out with the poor folks, the drunkards, the prostitutes.
Yes!
The very people that you're deriding, or that you think you're deriding, because basically anybody who isn't bootstrappy enough for you falls under those categories anyway.
Right, like, feel however you want to feel about religion. I'm not here to convince you one way or the other. But I implore you, do an actual study of the life of Jesus. Dude has more in common with, like, Karl Marx than George Bush and Ronald Reagan. Like, yes. Dude, if you read the Bible, the New Testament specifically, like Matthew and Luke, you'll find out Jesus was pretty socialist. Like, he was vehemently for the community must do for, like, the community must provide for the community.
And like, those with more were guilty. All of them were guilty. They did whatever they were accused of, whether it was extortion, whether it was beating people, whether it was whoremongering, whether it was adultery. They all did it. Like, even the woman who everyone dropped their stones and left, she did it. They just weren't going to stone the men who did it with her. And that was Jesus' point. You all were all messing with this woman, but you just want to stone her because the law says so. But whichever one of you wasn't doing the same thing, you throw first. They all walked off. Where's your accusers? Oh, yeah, that's right.
I have never before, probably about a couple of years ago, really felt like I got the meaning of it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. And I used to think it meant like really rich people, like super rich, like mega millionaires, but I have come to recognize that it is literally the people just like middle class, regular old, job having folks who feel like they have just enough to make them feel like if someone else has something, it takes away from them.
Yep.
And it makes their hearts so hard they can't find compassion for another person.
Honey, the way these people act, they think they can buy their way into heaven.
Because, and sort of bringing it back to everything we talked about in the beginning, the American dream is only special if everybody can't get it.
Exactly.
Like, the American dream only means something if it isn't available to everyone. Like, if you tell people, yeah, I work hard, so I have what I have because I worked harder than you. And if you get it, then what does that mean for all the hard work I put in? And
exactly. And you feel like it doesn't mean anything because you put your work.
But what it means is maybe, like you said, you put your work into stuff, and maybe instead of being angry at the people that didn't quote unquote work as hard as you, maybe you should ask yourself why you had to work so hard to get what they had in the first place.
Exactly.
It is. I have a lot of anger that I just don't know how to process. And it's just so frustrating between that. And then seeing other black people saying, oh, well, they shouldn't riot. They're not doing this the right way. We need real leaders.
Oh my God, can we please get off the idea that we need one center figurehead or a few figureheads to effectively organize? That's what you hear a lot of older people saying about younger people and their organization tactics. Because because floating around in these circles, I do, not as much as I used to, but I've bounced in these circles. A lot of it is more community oriented, multiple voice oriented. Everybody gets a chance to speak oriented. It isn't, okay, we tell you this one thing and you're the one guy that goes up and speaks to everybody.
Well, that's because we're
moving away from that.
Well, honestly, it wasn't even like that before. Like, even...
Right, the Black Panthers were run like Hydra, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, they had multiple heads.
Like, and I mean, even the stuff like about like Martin, like he led the civil rights movement. There were all kinds of people in the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
And dirty little secret, Martin Luther King Jr. was not that influential in the North. He wielded a very limited influence with Northern blacks, who were largely much more aligned with Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Than they were with Martin Luther King Jr. It's just, in retrospect, after the I Have a Dream speech and the assassination and all of that, we've gone back and deified Martin and then removed everything that we could that didn't fit a specific non-violent, everything's wonderful about America, the founders and apple pie narrative.
Romanticism in the
of one leader. It's just bullshit.
Other romanticism is
even so, like, disrupting business is part of protest. Like, some people are like, well, these people can't go to work because the buses and this, that, and the other. Arguably,
he called for that.
Of it.
Martin promoted disruptive protest. What do you think the bus boycott was?
Sitting in at what
do you think the Pettis Bridge thing was?
These same people would be saying that the lunch counter sit-ins were disruptive because they're just people trying to make a living, and how could you prevent them from making their living and doing all this kind of stuff? It's
like they're just trying to get a sandwich. I mean, yeah, they spat in those Negroes' faces, but sandwich.
Like, they're just trying to live.
The whole point.
So is everybody.
The whole point of a protest is I have to disrupt your life enough to pay attention to me. Everyone loves the concept of a nonviolent protest because they can ignore it. People were protesting Freddie Gray's death for a week or two. No one cared. They only showed up when the CVS burned. One fucking CVS, one insured CVS burns, and now suddenly it's a tragedy.
And a big part of the nonviolent civil rights movement is the visibility of it. Martin Luther King, all those people did a lot of the stuff they did for the visibility, because not only did they want the imagery of them getting abused to get around the country, they wanted that shit to get around the world, to put pressure on our government to make these changes. It wasn't just, okay, I'm going to go out here and I'm going to be nonviolent, kumbaya, my lord. No, it was a strategy. One of many strategies in the whole liberation movement of the 60s. But no one wants to talk about that.
No.
Or the money that came from Russia.
Oh, yeah. They really don't want to talk about how much flowed in from Russia and but you lynch your Negroes. Like, no one wants to focus on that.
So, there's a curfew in Baltimore. Now they're tear gassing people, trying to get them to disperse for the curfew, because we have curfews in America.
I promise, I love V for Vendetta, the movie, but I start seeing these parallelisms starting to freak me out a little bit.
Girl.
It's V for Vendetta, Hunger Games, Matrix. Pick your proletarian uprising allegory movie. I'm about to say, pick your proletarian allegory uprising. Yeah.
Happy to comply.
So, what you... Hail Hydra. That's it. That's all I got. As far as the curfew goes, I'm completely 100% in for violating the curfew, because having a curfew in America is bullshit. You don't tell people... you don't tell people... Baltimore has a very large homeless community. Where do they go during a curfew?
You better get under a bench. They're trying to outlaw homeless people from doing that.
I wasn't gonna say it, but you know who else had curfews? the Nazis.
So it's on principle. I think curfews are bullshit. You can't tell people go home. Like, you can't tell people who live in a place you're not allowed to be outside in the place you live. I personally think that is bullshit. So I'm all for standing outside during a curfew just so you can see what happens. Like, what's happening right now, yes, that's what happens when you violate a curfew. That's the point. Why do you feel the need to beat and gas me for standing outside at night? Why is that so threatening to you?
Because riot.
That's the point. And that's why I'm fully in for violation of curfews. If especially a curfew like this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like that's it. That's all I got on that, man. Like I have a lot of just unresolved shit in me, and the only thing that I can come out with is NWA Was Right.
Why do we have trolls in our damn YouTube chat?
Oh, I can't even see the YouTube chat. Yeah. Oh, what's going on in the YouTube chat? Read me one of the comments. I can do that for the next 5 minutes. I can play with trolls. What's going on in the chat?
It's just so random. It's nothing notable, that's for sure.
Yeah. No, okay. So that's the thing. If you're gonna try to troll, and if you're gonna try to,
we like trolls. At least be good at it.
Trolls can be entertaining.
That's the thing. People deal with trolls however you deal with them. That's your prerogative. Personally, I think the whole "don't feed the trolls" concept, as I've gotten older, that is complete bullshit. When you see a troll, you have to publicly shame them and ban them. It's not just to ignore them and they go away. I learned that lesson with Will Hunter. You can't just ignore trolls and hope they go away. You have to shame them. You have to ban them. You have to deal with them in that moment. You can't just let them run.
My nigga Moan summed it up. Yeah. We made it. We got trolls, nigga. We made it.
I will say this. If you want to troll, we're not new to this. We true to this.
Okay, and we does this better than you.
We OG at the trolling.
So, like, if you want to troll, fine, come with it. Just be entertaining and don't be boring. Like, during the whole Gamergate thing, I got the most boring trolls in my mention.
Like, someone no, here's one. Did you steal my KFC? Nigga, I eat Popeyes, okay? I am a classy bitch.
Like, you think that's so clever. Oh, yes. Did you steal the KFC? Tee-hee, get it? Because black people eat chicken, ya huck. I mean, I ain't steal the KFC, but you
good chicken. I eat good chicken, okay?
Like, you stole the country. So, where do we go from there? Like,
I eat good
you think
chicken.
you're so clever.
The fuck?
And that's the thing. Like, I am fully in favor of exposing and shaming trolls and then banning them because there's no place for it. Like, that's my MO. I will shame, I will engage, and then I kick you out. So.
You got that 13-year-old trolling KFC.
Yeah.
Right. That shit was...
And then a bunch of Spanish.
1999.
I don't think any of us read Spanish. So.
My stepdad reads the Spanish.
Oh, well, you can get him.
Translating. We doing it all over the world.
Get this old angry nigga to read it. Yeah. Say that, wifey. Wifey said we own we millionaire bread.
So, I guess we're wrapping up now if we're doing the troll slang portion of the show. I just want to thank you guys for hanging out with us on the live show. You can always check us out at 3FifsPodcast.com. Did I get that right, Eric?
Yes, it's spelled out for the .com. It's the number for the Twitter account.
And I'm gonna stop. I'm just gonna talk because it's in my lower third. It's in my lower third. Look at it. Follow it. It's in my lower third under Beyonce's Anchor Translator. Follow that account. I'm doing it. I'm talking. There you go.
Yeah. So there you go. Like I said, you can check out the website 3FifsPodcast.com. You can get the audio from today's show. You can also check us out on Stitcher Radio, 3Fifs Podcast. Leave us a 5-star review, and we will read it on air. Download the app, listen to it on your commute to work. Tell a friend. We do this every day at 2 o'clock, or we do this every Tuesday at 9 o'clock. Yeah, not every day.
We
do this every Tuesday. 9 o'clock. Hang out with us. If you can't catch us live, catch the audio. We're going to start putting up more content on the site proper itself and not just the audios of the shows. So thanks for all your support. Tell a friend. We're back. We're here for the long haul. We ain't going nowhere.
And subscribe to our YouTube.
Oh, yeah, subscribe to our YouTube because I'm going to be chopping up I'm gonna chop up the videos and start making clips, and you can share the clips with your friends. Say, hey, if you like this clip, check out the show. So yeah,
our clip got Jay-Z to do tile facts.
It did.
It did.
Put it into existence.
We're just awaiting Eric's confirmation.
Okay.
That's really all we're waiting on at this point.
I assume the check is in the mail.
Cough it up.
We're like, forget the confirmation. Give me the check.
Want money.
So yeah, if you're in Baltimore proper, stay safe out there. It is open season on a nigga's ass, and Baltimore PD is out there active.
It's open season on a nigga's ass.
So until next time,
friend Hilario.
We're out here. See you next week. You can also catch us Monday. Eric and at CC at Carmela Luster will be doing the Game of Thrones reviews. So, got your thrones? We got them here on Mondays. Check us out. Until next time, we're out of here. Peace.
Bye.